You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
So I think actually agentic AI is genuinely the real game changer here, right? If you look at the cybercrime industry for the last 10, 15 years, it's arguably the best example of a service industry in the world, even more so than cloud computing and so on, because you just replace all of those services or APIs with an agent, and now you just pull agents together, they converse among themselves effectively, and you have this like cybercrime automated ecosystem that can run itself.
Welcome to the AI Security Brief, where we're unpacking emerging AI threats, vulnerability research, and the strategic decisions security leaders are making right now to get ahead of the next wave of cyber threats. I'm Dustin Childs.
And I'm Johnny Hand. And today's episode surfaces a critical point for me. Not only is AI making existing attacks faster, but the entire structure of how cybercrime operates is being rebuilt around it.
And it is quite a profitable industry, too.
Yeah, it definitely is. And to explore the evolution of cybercrime, we sat down with Bob McArdle, the director of cybercrime research at Trend AI. Now, Bob has spent 2 decades tracking cybercriminals, so he has a front row seat on how agentic AI is reshaping cybercrime.
Yeah, what really struck me in this conversation is how Bob frames what's happening. I mean, this isn't just AI makes phishing emails better, which it does, but this is about an entire criminal service economy, one that is already more sophisticated than most people realize, and how agentic AI is giving it a new engine.
Yeah, we talked about the 3 rules of cybercrime adoption also, and why agentic AI hits differently than generative AI. Also, what defenders can actually do to get ahead of the cybercriminals.
Bob does not disappoint. If you're a security or technology leader looking to understand where the threat landscape is evolving, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Yeah, so Bob, I mean, your work, from what I understand, is in a lot of crime and doing takedowns, working with LEOs, and your talk is about vibe crime. But before we get into that, explain to me what vibe coding is, because some people think it's like a really bad thing. Some people think it's a good thing, neutral, whatever. What is vibe coding to you?
So vibe coding, I think it gets a bit of a bad rep because in some situations it's people who are not traditional coders suddenly being able to develop things. But essentially it's just coding changing from a language you had to learn, be it Python or something like that, to effectively being able to code in your language of choice, whether that's French, German, English, whatever it is. You just simply describe the problem you're trying to solve and work back and forth with an AI to actually solve it. So it's quite a interesting, like, new development.
That must make it easier, because as a defender, I know one of the big things that I did was I tried to make it so expensive, because given enough time and resources, anything could be breached, right? Mm-hmm. So I tried to make it so expensive that the attacker would essentially ignore me and move on. But it sounds like with vibe coding, you can take a pretty generic person and get them to a point where they can be a criminal without having a lot of skills. Is that correct?
So I think there's 2 parts to being a criminal, right? One is the technical skills you're going to need. Mm-hmm. And yes, it absolutely lowers the barrier for entry for that type of thing, right? Because anybody can get access to the tools or build them themselves, or the actual tool prices will drop because anybody can build them. The second side of being a criminal, however, is the actual ethics and morals and so on, right? So if you, for example, are, a hacker, a teenage hacker, and you break into a server somewhere and you're poking around, and you might get that joy out of like, hey, I've actually been able to technically accomplish this. But if you then go to the level of installing ransomware and inflicting misery and so on somebody, that's completely different moral compass than the person who's just doing it for, creativity and things like that. So that's the bit that AI doesn't affect, right?
Okay.
That moral compass part.
I do want to dig in a little bit on the momentum that's happening right now, and just the language and the speed at which agentic AI is taking off. Mm-hmm. And how is that translating with cybercrime? Like, what are some of those second and third effects that are having? Are you seeing that in your research with cybercriminals at the pace that we're doing it from a defensive perspective, or even just like automation and using agentic tools to take those task actions?
Yeah, so I think actually agentic AI is genuinely the real game changer here, right? For cyber criminals in particular. So if you just look at pure generative AI, or people who be listening in and are familiar with, your chat GPTs or Claudes or whatever, that's very good at answering questions, right? You ask a question, you get an answer back, or you write a whole paper for you, whatever. But it doesn't really do something on your behalf. And that doing something on your behalf that agentic gives us is the real game changer. Because if you look at the cybercrime industry for the last 10, 15 years, it's arguably the best example of a service industry in the world, even more so than cloud computing and so on. And that gives its incredible flexibility where you can just stitch together these different APIs and services from criminals. But that is perfectly then set up for agentic, because you just replace all of those services or APIs with an agent, and now you just pull agents together, they converse among themselves effectively, and you have this like cybercrime automated ecosystem that can run itself.
It's an interesting perspective, because I think for many people, when they're looking into, maybe the lens that they view cyber criminals or even criminals in general, they're not often thinking about how sophisticated they can be. And I love the fact that you just hit on how they're even better in many cases than we are at like building out these services and providing them. So let's take a step back for a second, because you've been doing threat research and into cyber criminals for many years. I'd love to hear kind of that journey over the last maybe decade into the last few years, as you've kind of waded into the water at the pace we have in research with AI, agentic AI, and these capabilities around cybercrime.
Sure. So I've been kind of working in cybercrime research and also like APT, nation state research and things for about 2 decades now. And you see over that time like these major waves coming along. And the longer you're doing this, you realize some of these waves are essentially cyclical. They're kind of happening over and over again. The technology is different, but the core scam, the core attack, the business is effectively the same thing. It's just that the new technology gets laid on top. So you had, for a long time, you had quite a lot of innovation in cybercrime. Then we came to the kind of ransomware era that we've all kind of lived through over the last while, which arguably actually killed innovation in the cybercrime space.
Interesting.
Because it suddenly went from, before that we had things like banking attacks and phishing and so on. But ransomware made so much money that it was very hard for any new ideas to take off. Because if you're making $1 million a month from doing ransomware and some new, technically more interesting attack comes along, but it's untried, it's not tested, and so on, why would you even bother doing it? Just keep getting $1 million, check every single month. So it actually stifled creativity. And now we're at the point where there's this kind of perfect storm happening. Industry generally knows how to solve the ransomware problem at this point, right? Or if you don't at this stage in your industry, you're in trouble, right? There's multiple solutions out there. So they're struggling with that. Like payment rates for ransomware with the lowest they've ever been. And at the same time, you've got this rising technology in AI, which as I said is like perfectly set up with agentic AI for cybercrime. And cyber criminals by their nature tend to be technical and interested in new technology, right? From a pure just like, oh, that's cool, right? So this perfect storm is happening where they're on one side they have to change because their industry is slowing down. And then there's this new transformative technology coming along and they're like, let's jump on this and see what happens.
I know at RSA you presented on Vibe Crime, and I think it's an interesting title. And you talk about these 3 core principles or laws of cybercrime adoption. Can you just expand that a little bit for us and get us to understand what you're presenting there?
Sure. So when we see, often in our industry, we see, researchers like myself or colleagues in other companies, and they will come up with new attacks, and criminals could work like this. But what they're actually doing is they're thinking like hackers, not like criminals, right? So they're thinking like there's a technical way you can break into this, or like, and you probably see this in the vulnerability world as well, right?
Yes.
But then when it comes to the criminals, you have to think like, what's the business here? Can I make more money than I used to make? And so on. And over time, we've found that criminals evolve a little bit slower than people think they do, because you only evolve when you have to or when there's a really good opportunity out there to make even more money than you're currently making. So we've kind of got 3 rules that we call internally the 3 rules of being a cyber criminal, and I think we published them in a paper recently. So the first one was very simple. Criminals want an easy life. Right, that's the entire point of being a criminal. Otherwise, you would be working in a real job, doing real things.
I think the movie
with
Goodfellas explained that to us.
Yes, exactly, right. The second thing is, if there's any new technology out there, whether it's agentic AI or whatever it is that you want to adapt, the return of investment from it has to be better than everything else in the market. Otherwise, again, what's the point? Why would you adopt it? And the third rule we see them do is cybercriminal change is very much evolution, it's not revolution. So they just take what was working and it's like, oh, this isn't working quite as well as it used to. Can we tweak this a little bit? Okay, we're back on track again. Right. So only the very largest criminal organizations have really ever had like R&D teams where they sink costs in the hope that it pays off in the future, like what we do in our industry, right? So it doesn't happen that often. So those three together help you understand a lot about how cyber criminals will adopt certain new technologies and how they'll pivot.
What should defenders do to understand the barrier to entry has been brought down for these criminals? What is some real advice that we could take away to know that the cost of cybercrime is plummeting?
Yeah, so if you think about the cost of cybercrime is plummeting, so what's that going to do, right? First of all, because we said like they don't adapt to brand new schemes unless they really have to. So the first thing they're going to do is just crank the volume up to 11 on everything that they're currently doing. So more phishing, more ransomware, more malware, more everything else, which is a little bit boring to say, right? But that's what they will do first. And then things like deepfakes and so on. So the first thing you have to do as a defender is you know how to defend against these things, right? At least hopefully you know how to defend against these things at this point. But what you're going to be doing is if you were struggling with the volume before, you haven't seen anything yet. It could be 100x, right, in terms of the volume coming at you. So if your old model was we look at, 1 in 10 of the alerts on our network and our SOC processes and so on, that's just not going to scale, right, unless you hire a whole bunch of extra people. So what you're going to honestly have to have is you need agents to fight the agents, for at least at the bottom layer, right? Let's just remove the layer 1, layer 2 of attacks out of the picture, and then you have your senior humans who go in, okay, right, I know what's going on here and triaging and so on. So I would advise anyone genuinely, every single product in the entire security space at this point has got AI something inside it, right?
Yes.
It's kind of almost a joke at this point. Look at the ones who genuinely are talking about agentic workflows and things like agentic SIEMs and SOCs and so on, and they get it. They get the actual issue. Quiz them on that, right? Ask them about it. What are you honestly doing? And if they can't answer those questions beyond like AI is magic and it's a black box and it's awesome, then stay away, right? Because you need that to remove that wave of information coming at you.
Well, help me, especially as a former security leader, as a CISO that worked in organizations, I always look at threat research and different reports that are published. And I often walk away saying, okay, what can I do with this? So for me, when you talk about the cyber criminals really getting ready to really ramp that up, the challenge that I see is that we have so much AI hype going on.
Yep.
So for those security leaders that are listening that are going, okay, well, how do I break through that noise? How do I understand, as an example, what AI-based security tools really are agentic, really will help me navigate the coming wave of cybercrime?
So I have a couple of tips in that area. The first thing is, for anyone listening, you have to realize that this kind of AI revolution, and it genuinely is a revolution, is exponential in its kind of scale, right? And luckily, everybody listening in, unless we have a bunch of 3-year-olds on here, have lived through COVID, right? So they know what something exponential feels like, right? And I'll just give an example, right? The number one way that you navigate something like that is understand the information and understanding the trend that's happening, not just the individual days data points, right? So you can go, okay, I think I know where this is going next week. I think I know where this is going 6 months' time, and you can react accordingly, right? So if you imagine back, just for play out the analogy, and then I'll get back to the answer. It's March 2020. 1st of March, I think there's 1,000 cases around the world or something, right? And if that's where you freeze your knowledge and you're like, okay, that's how the world is. 15 days later, 8 times as many cases. 30 days later, 50 times as many cases. And that's how AI works. So that when we are at the bleeding edge of AI and we're testing out things and so on, and when we talk to people who are maybe a month behind in their knowledge, what we're talking about sounds like science fiction to them. They're like, we don't want any of that future stuff that you're talking about. Tell me what's happening now. It's like, this is happening now. You just haven't read this yet, right? This is actually yesterday's news, I'm telling you. So when we bring that then into advice, it's read the more strategic publications from the research community, not so much the, threat of the day, we found this, it's super cool and so on. The security industry will always publish each day the corner case because it's interesting. In the same way that nobody publishes anymore, it's like ransomware affected people today. It's like, we know, of course it did, right? It's only the anomalies that people are going to report on. So if you can read the more strategic reports, and at least maybe 2 per month at this stage, just to keep up with it, you'll be able to see through the hype of the day and see the actual trend that you need to care about.
Gotcha. And are there any recommendations that you love?
Yeah, so genuinely, actually, I've 2 that I'll give you. One, honestly, the reports coming out of Trend AI and our team. So the cybercrime report that we put out is still very, very relevant. It's a few months old now, but we built it to be strategic, right? That you can learn from. There's also actually a site that I use every single day. It came from an internal team, actually at Trend AI, but we published it external for anybody to use. It's news.aatf.ai. And it just does a roundup of all the AI news of the day into an RSS feed that you can subscribe to, and it gives you that daily dose of this is what happened in the world today. I think that's utterly critical for keeping up to date with what's going on, because a single day's news is like weeks of news in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for sharing your research with us today. I was actually talking to RSA. It was a really great presentation. It's very important, very eye-opening work. And we can't wait to have you back on the show again to terrify us with your latest research into the criminal organizations and the criminal mind.
Anytime.
Okay, the 3 rules Bob shared stuck with me. Criminals want an easy life. New technology only gets adopted if the ROI beats what they are already doing. And change in cybercrime world is evolutionary and not revolutionary.
Yeah, and here comes real agentic AI, which is almost purpose-built for the way criminal operations are already structured. It offers that repeatable framework for a quick return.
You know, the service economy point is the one I keep coming back to. These groups have operated like a dark web version of cloud infrastructure for years. They are modular and specialized. Agentic AI doesn't just disrupt that, it accelerates it.
Yeah, and I think that really is the key takeaway of the day.
Go ahead.
Well, the volume of attacks is about to increase in a way that breaks the current model for most security teams. So if you're triaging 1 in 10 alerts today and that feels hard, Bob's point is you haven't seen anything yet. The only real answer is using AI on the defensive side to absorb that first wave. So your experienced folks can focus on what really matters.
And that means being deliberate about which tools you're betting on. Not does this vendor have AI, because every vendor is claiming that they have AI right now. But do they genuinely understand agentic workflows? Can they operate at the volume of what's coming? Those are the questions worth asking.
I totally agree. A huge thank you to Bob McArdle for his time and for sharing his insights on the evolving nature of cybercrime. Links to the cybercrime report and the AATF daily newsfeed are in the show notes. Both are very much worth adding to your reading list.
Couldn't agree more. And that does it for our first episode of the AI Security Brief. We want to thank you for joining us, and we hope this conversation has you thinking a little bit differently about security. If it does, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. Let us know what you thought, and so you don't miss what's next.
The AI Security Brief is mixed and produced by Elliot Peltzman with original music by Omnia Jinx. Our executive producer is Jennifer Ivan with content strategy by Mayan Plout, Shannon Murphy, and Melanie Gallant. Additional production help by Liz Stokes, video editing by Bridget Creakywild and Sorel Jabi. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, and we'll see you next time on the AI Security Brief.